Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it's the 26th of October, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So I know at this point you're all probably sick of me talking about censorship resistance on Ethereum, but there are some rather, new things that I wanted to talk about. And new in the sense of, it's a kind of thing that I've been looking at over the last 24, 48 hours, doing the math on, and I wanted to, share my findings, so to speak, with you guys. So let's start with the mevwatch.info website that we're all used to by now. I've shared it in the Discord channel, I've highlighted it on the refuel before. As you can see over the last day, we're now up to 63% of all blocks on Ethereum that are enforcing OFAC quote-unquote compliance, aka it's the relays, the MEV boost relays that are censoring, right? And if we untick the include all blocks, a little toggle here, this will include just the MEV boost related blocks. 92% of those relayed blocks are enforcing OFAC compliance. So these things are both up, especially, the 63% of all blocks. That was only 50% a few days ago, so it's obviously increasing here. Well, okay, why is this the case? Well, it's because more and more validators are using MEV boost relays. They're coming online and they are choosing to use a censored relay. And as I've pointed out before, 4 out of the 7 relays that are currently live are censoring. Flashbots, as we all know, Eden Network, Block Native, and Blocks Routes Regulated relay here, which means only about the other 3, which account for only 8% of the relay market share, are not censoring. And I've actually noticed that Flashbots isn't growing that much anymore. It's hovering around 80 to 85%-ish, but Eden Network's growing now as well. So it seems people are choosing to go with the censored relays, not just Flashbots, but also other ones like Eden Network, which is kind of sad to see. There's no sugarcoating it, right? It's definitely not ideal. And then if we go to the rated.network website, which I've highlighted on the refill before, we can actually see which entities are using which consensus clients and also what their block space distribution looks like. So I highlighted this the other day, but this is where I started doing the math. So after I highlighted it on the refill, I started doing the math around this, and especially because I saw this number increasing 63%, right? So the math that I've been doing is basically taking the block space distribution here and looking at the vanilla blocks, right? So you can see here, Lido right now has 50% going through Flashbots and about 20% going through other relays. The ones that are going through the uncensored relays, I think maybe blocks route is 10% here. So there's 31% that are vanilla blocks, which you can expect to probably end up using relays eventually. Then you have Coinbase, which, if this data is correct, have just started testing out MEV boost relays. They're running blocks through both Flashbots and blocks route right now, but the vast majority, 99.4% of their blocks, are still vanilla blocks. So you get what I'm saying here. Now, the math that I've done, and I've got the math handy here so I don't have to do it live on stream. It never really goes very well. I was basically talking to some friends about this. I'm like, okay, this is probably the only chance we're going to be able to get to see or get a nice picture of which validators are actually in it for quote unquote the mission, right? Are in it above profit. Because the only reason why you would choose a censoring relayer above, a non-censoring one would be for profit motives. As I discussed before, I don't think the validators care to censor or don't or not censor, right? In aggregate, I believe that some would choose to censor, some wouldn't, but for the most part, I don't believe most of them would. They're only doing it because they're profit maximalists, right? They want to inch out as much APY as they can from their ETH stake, and we shouldn't blame them for that. That's part of the design. So how do we fix this? Well, obviously all the solutions that I've discussed before, but I'll touch on that in a little bit. So the naive math that I did here was I basically took all these vanilla blocks from each of these entities. I got the block space distribution as a percentage, so some naive math here. Lido has 30%, roughly 30% vanilla blocks. It has roughly 30% network penetration. That means that 10% of their network penetration right now isn't doing any relaying. It's just using vanilla blocks, right? So what if it all went to Flashbots? That's another 10% that instantly goes to Flashbots, right? It's another 10% of the network that instantly goes to Flashbots. That's not good. Then you start looking at Coinbase, right? I mean, Coinbase has 12% network penetration with basically nothing, no relays right now. What if they just all went to Flashbots? Well, add another 10% on, 12% on there. And then you can go down this list and look at the percentages. And the math that I came to was basically, if you go down this list and look at all the vanilla blocks and just naively assume that they would all use Flashbots, you get to about 90-ish% of the whole network using a censoring relay. Now, that would say at very most, at least in this point in time, as the network stands today, and remember, when we don't have withdrawals yet either, but as the network stands today, you could say that 10% of validators actively care about not participating in censorship on the network. That's at the very most, I would say. And I would say realistically, it's probably lower than that, right? So how do you, I guess, like think of that and deal with that reality? Well, you deal with it with all the solutions that I've mentioned before. You make it so that censorship on the network is incredibly hard to do. You make it so the incentive isn't there to censor. You make it so that you eliminate things like MEV that encourage censorship, because without MEV, no one would be using Flashbots, right? No one would be using relays in general, and no one would be censoring because no one had censored previously prior to this. Because what a relay is, it's basically a aggregator of blocks. It basically it's an extreme centralizing force within a network. Now, in saying that, a MEV boost relay is better than the alternative, which is basically what Ethereum was trending towards before Flashbots came along and invented MEV boost, which is basically block building centralizing absolutely completely with just one or two entities. Now we have 7, but we expect that to increase over time. But also we're coming up with solutions like PBS to enshrine these sorts of stuff so that we don't have to deal with these centralization concerns, right? So that's how we're dealing with it on the technical side of things. And this is why I've said time and time again, the social layer is not enough here. Because the social layer works in very specific scenarios. I've discussed the difference between transaction inclusion and exclusion censorship, right, and attestation censorship. So the social layer would work to socially slash validators that are participating in attestation censorship, but because that goes against the rules of the network, that's considered an attack on the network. But when you get into the murkiness of inclusion censorship, like, I mean, yeah, okay, if you are you're a maximalist of credible neutrality, then you can consider an attack on the Ethereum network. But, and this is very important, the only reason why that's possible is because we've given the ability to stakers and miners before the merge to order and include or exclude whatever transactions they want in a block. And because that ability exists, we get what we have today. So how do we fix it? We remove that ability, or we remove as much of that ability as possible with things that I've discussed before, obviously PBS, CR list, shutterized beacon chain, all that sorts of stuff, right? Basically making it so that this kind of stuff doesn't happen. But as it currently stands, I mean, I don't know if it's going to go to 90% of all blocks enforcing OFAC compliance, whatever, right? I don't know how high it's going to go. I do believe it'll level out eventually, but as I said, this is the new concept I wanted to introduce to you guys, this naive math that I've been doing, but also explain to you that there's a lot of nuance here. I mean, the biggest I think is still the withdrawals not being enabled, because right now, I mean, if you staked with Coinbase, for example, or you staked with Lido or Binance, yeah, you can exit via their LSD tokens, right? But one, you would probably have to exit at a discount for most of them. I don't think Lido, but I think Coinbase and Binance's LSDs are still at a discount. And 2, it doesn't actually withdraw it from the beacon chain. So Lido still has 30% network penetration, even if all the STETH got sold on the open market. Everyone just exited their STETH position. No one bought it. Obviously, the STETH price would collapse in that scenario. But Lido's network penetration would not change at all because there is no ETH being withdrawn from the beacon chain. That means that if you want to protest Lido or any of these other entities engaging in censorship with your ETH, right, with your validator that you've given the ETH to for them to spin up, it doesn't do anything because they can still run that validator just the same, because all you've done is exit your position. You haven't actually withdrawn anything. I think that's incredibly important, and I think that's something that a lot of people that's lost on a lot of people still for some reason. But yeah, it's incredibly important. The second thing that I think is very important as well is that a lot of solutions are being worked on. It's not like we're looking at this and kicking the can down the road or sweeping it under the rug and thinking, oh, it's fine. Who cares? As I've discussed before, even though 63% of the network is censoring Tornado Cash transactions right now, well, here, I'll make excuses for that. Oh, it's only Tornado Cash transactions. It doesn't affect that many people. Tornado Cash is banned anyway in the US effectively. So who cares about that, right? This is me making the, I guess, counter argument here, or I guess making up excuses for censorship. And then I could say, well, it doesn't really matter because you can still get your transaction included. You just have to wait a few extra blocks. While I believe that that's a really cool feature of blockchains is that you can't be unilaterally censored, I do think that's still a bit of an excuse where it's like, okay, yeah, cool, you can do that, but still this is bad, right? This is not a good outcome. We still need to fix this. And we are. You guys know this. I've highlighted it plenty of times, and I've got a few things that I want to talk about and get through it after I finish this little spiel here, which I'm ranting, I know now, but I think this is important. You guys know that it's being worked on, right? So I thought that was just worth highlighting. Don't be surprised to see that number going up here. I know it's at 63% right now. Don't be surprised to see it keep going up. But at the same time, the funny thing about this, right, is that because the block building is so centralized right now, at least the MEV boost relay is so centralized within Flashbots. If Flashbots was to turn their relay offline like tomorrow or today or whatever, like if they were to do it right now, censorship on the network would drop to under 5%, I think, or something like that. Or it would probably drop to around 5% of all blocks or less, just because Flashbots shut down. So you can see how there's just this one centralized entity that is controlling a lot of the block production, which is not the ideal outcome. Flashbots doesn't want this to be the outcome either. That's why they're working on things like Suave to decentralize out relayers. That's why they open source MEV Boost so other people would build relayers. But I think still, doesn't matter if the MEV boost is open source, doesn't matter if they're decentralizing relayers. I think that from what I've seen, PBS is that long-term solution. It's going to take longer to come than we would like, of course. CR lists help a lot as well with things. Shutterized beacon chain, maybe that eventuates. Like, there are other solutions that we can play around with. But I think from that example that I just used was just trying to show you that it's not validators that are censoring, it is the block builders, as I've discussed before. If Flashbots was to shut down, maybe the validators move to one of the other censoring relayers, but my guess would that would actually distribute pretty healthily across all of these, because the blocks route max profit and blocks route ethical, they both got a pretty healthy share of the network. 3.7% on the max profit and 3.5% on ethical. That's a pretty healthy share of the non-Flashbots relays. So if you were to extrapolate that and say, okay, well, what percentage of the Flashbots relay would go to Eden Network versus blocks route, it would basically be about equal. So you would end up with like a 50%, or maybe just over 50% censoring still because of, just as an example, because of Eden Network, and then 50% not censoring because of blocks route. And this is of the relayed blocks, not of the total blocks. So yeah, we need to fix this, obviously. Now, speaking of fixing it, there have been some updates out. So one here from Flashbots themselves. They've open sourced the sync-proxy, which is another piece of the Flashbots infrastructure that they help is useful to others. It allows execution layer clients to be driven by multiple beacon nodes for redundancy. So this is more on the infrastructure side of things, but this I think is still important, because you want people to be able to build their own stable relays besides Flashbots. You want blocks routes relay to be stable. Ideally, you want all the non-censoring relays to be as stable as possible so people trust them. When people use them, adds to that network effect, and there can be more profit for those non-censoring relays. So we get that profit incentive, because as I said, like a lot of this is, most of this is profit driven. If we can redirect that profit incentives to the non-censoring relays, then that's much better, obviously, for the network. So cool to see that. And another thing on MEV, Attestant has a blog post out today that's titled "Exploring the Impact of MEV Relays." Highly recommend reading this blog post. It does a really great job of explaining basically everything that I've gone over in the Refuel, but in like very clear, plain English, and a nice blog post that you can refer back to and don't have to listen to my rambling. So definitely go check that one out. And a nice little thread and blog post here from Obol Labs today talking about what DVT is and how it actually improves proof-of-stake Ethereum and how it helps proof-of-stake Ethereum become more decentralized, become more resilient, and all that good stuff there. So I'll link this thread in the blog post in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But those resources are really, really great to check out. learn more about this sorts of stuff. But yeah, I know at this point in time, I'm going to move on to some other things in a sec, but at this point in time, I know that the censorship stuff, I've talked about it a lot, but until it actually gets fixed or until it starts improving, I'm going to keep talking about it, because even though I believe that it's not going to get fixed at the social layer, I think that the social layer influences the technical one. If no one was screaming for solutions to this censorship, then not much would be getting done. I think that it'd still be solutions coming, but there wouldn't be a sense of urgency behind it. It's kind of like how I think about scaling. I've been saying this on the refuel for ages, since I basically started the refuel. Before the gas prices were high, there was no, and consistently high, there was no real push to scale on Ethereum, right? Like we did have some teams here and there doing it, but there wasn't demand, right? There wasn't that business case there. Then we had consistently high fees, and all of a sudden we've got all these L2s, all these scalability solutions, we've got all these things that have come online, and they've persisted even through the low gas environment that we're in today, because people are well and truly aware of the fact that this low gas environment is not going to last, and also Ethereum's roadmap has basically been cemented as a roll-up centric roadmap. So because of that, and because of all the screaming from people on the social layer and things like that to get these scalability solutions done, it happened. I think the same is true for the censorship stuff, but there is a bit of a difference there in that there's not a direct profit. There's not a direct profit incentive there, right? It's not like you can spin up something and issue a token in order to fix MEV. Maybe Flashbots issues a token, but that doesn't fix MEV, it doesn't fix censorship, right? But there is I guess you could call it a soft profit incentive, in that if you care about the Ethereum network and you want the Ethereum network to keep its credible neutrality, to keep growing, to keep being healthy, to keep getting adoption, which would then translate into ETH going up in value, right? That soft kind of profit motive. Well, then you should care about censorship on the network being fixed and being eliminated as much as possible. So that's the, I think, difference between the two, the layer 2 kind of stuff and this stuff. But it still comes back to the same point, in that the social layer is important for highlighting issues, making noise about things, getting it across to the technical people implementing these technical solutions about what's important and what should come first and what should be prioritized. That's where the strength is. But in terms of just yelling at Flashbots and being like, hey, shut down your relayer because you're censoring, you're hurting the network, I don't think that actually achieves anything. Short term, yeah, sure. As I explained, maybe a lot of the people that were using Flashbots go to a non-censoring relayer. But at the end of the day, if we don't actually fix the core of the issue, which is the fact that relays can censor and can get a large part of the network, then we're not really doing anything except putting a band-aid on it if Flashbots was to shut down their relay. And I think Flashbots understands that. That's why they probably believe that shutting down their relay is not a solution. It is not something they should be doing. I don't believe they make any money from their relay either, so it's not a profit motive. I think they have a very strong belief that if they were to shut down their relay, the network would be in a worse position than it currently is. Now, I know that might be weird to say, but I think that's what they believe. I don't know. I haven't confirmed that. I haven't spoken to any of the Flashbots team, but that's my kind of read on it there. But anyway, I'm going to leave that at that. I'll link all these resources in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But moving on to some more positive news, the work continues on Beacon Chain withdrawal. So Marius from the Geth team tweeted out today saying he updated the merge-fuzz to the withdrawal branch. Fuzzer has been running for 30 minutes without a crash. Great work by Light clients. The next round of testing is starting soon. We'll publish some static test cases for execution layer clients to check the implementation quickly. In plain English, this basically means they're testing Beacon Chain withdrawals using fuzzing, which is a form of testing code, making sure things work as expected. So very cool to see that. And you also have an update here from Alex Stokes, who has a document that he published where he said tracking progress towards a validated withdrawals testnet here. So we're getting close to a testnet for validated withdrawals. And as I said, and they want to do it by the end of this year. And as I said, once the testnets start rolling out, then we can kind of start looking into view of when this will actually hit mainnet. I said late Q1, early Q2 would be ideal, but the goal is to have it in that first half of next year. But the earlier, the better, of course. As I've said plenty of times, Beacon Chain withdrawals right now, the number one upgrade for Ethereum that needs to happen ASAP. It's the most important upgrade, and I'm very much looking forward to it because I think there's going to be that great reshuffling that I've spoken about before, and it's going to be very interesting to see where stake ends up once withdrawals are enabled. All right, so a new project that I came across today called Armada Network unveiled themselves, basically, and in a Twitter thread here. And I came across this because Kane from Synthetics quote tweeted this and talked about it. And I always trust Kane when it comes to these sorts of things. He's been working in crypto for quite a while now. But basically, what is Armada Network? Well, it is, they're calling themselves the only front-end hosting solution that is fully decentralized, secure, and fast and easy to use. So basically, it is infrastructure for hosting decentralized front ends. There's not that much information about them just yet. You can read this thread for a bit of a breakdown of what they're doing. But as I said, the TLDR is that they're trying to do decentralized front-end hosting. Obviously, a huge issue within crypto. Most of the front ends, or if not pretty much all of them, are centralized, which means that they're easily censored. We've seen this happen on Uniswap's front end. They have censored certain tokens, right? But as I've mentioned in the past, you shouldn't expect censorship resistance from centralized front ends, but that is also one of those excuses I talk about, right? It's all well and good for me to say it, and I believe it's the truth, but it's still an excuse. We can't expect people to, to take that on board and be like, oh, okay, well, I'll just have to go find some other way to interact with this. Well, what if all the centralized front ends were censoring you? Where would you go? There's not really any good decentralized alternatives right now. Well, enter Armada Network. They're trying to build a infrastructure that allows people to host their front ends or on this infrastructure so that it's decentralized and it's distributed among community-run nodes, and control is and control of the hosting has been handed over to a DAO. So the DAO of a project could control the front end in a decentralized way, which is obviously very, very exciting. But as I said, not too much information just yet, but there are a few projects working with them right now, including Synthetics, and you can check out the list here. But I'll link this thread in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But just really cool to see more competition here, because there's obviously IPFS, but IPFS is imperfect. There's a bunch of other solutions out there as well. There's DAppNet, which I've spoken about before, which I think is going above what this is trying to do, which is cool, obviously. But yeah, great to see more solutions coming here. All right, so Vitalik quote tweeted a thread from Scroll here today. So the thread from Scroll is really, really great. It basically starts off by saying, polynomial commitment schemes are critical to Ethereum scaling solutions. These schemes will be used in dank sharding as well as in the proof systems behind Scroll. What are polynomial commitment schemes and how will they help scale Ethereum? And there's a thread and a blog post here which you can give a read to. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But polynomial commitments have got to do with KZG, and I've talked about the KZG stuff before and KZG ceremony, so you can check out this thread. But Vitalik's quote tweet is what piqued my interest a lot here, where he said, "I'm so happy that Ethereum has such a strong culture of trying hard to make all our moon math as understandable and accessible to people as possible." This speaks to me on a really deep level, because my goal with the Refuel, or with the Daily Gwei generally, is to make this stuff on Ethereum, like all of it, as accessible as possible to everyday people. Now, that means that because I'm not a researcher, I'm not super technical, I rely on other people and other educators out there to dumb things down for me, so to speak, so that I can relay that information back to you guys as simply as possible. And now I know, I don't go as kind of like noob friendly as possible, because I just, frankly, I'd be repeating myself so much if I was doing that. But threads like this that Scroll puts together really helps me to describe these things for you guys, and helps me learn as well, of course. Like I'm learning all the time, just like you guys are. I'm not an expert, far from it. I think we're always learning until the day we die, basically. And if you stop learning, I think a person dies when they stop learning. That's like kind of a philosophical belief of mine. And no, it's not just book learning, but it's also wisdom and things like that. But I'm getting off on a tangent here. But that, as I said, like Vitalik's quote tweet here spoke deeply to me because of the stuff that I do with the Daily Gwei, but also because of my philosophical beliefs, which I hold very, very strongly. And that's why I'm an educator. It's a major reason why I'm an educator, is because of that belief that if you stop learning, that's when you actually die. Mentally, physically, obviously your body's still there. But I think that I've seen a fair few people in my life, actually, they stop learning, they stop caring about things, and they just seem like a shell of what they used to be. And it's just like a waste of potential, I would say. So yeah, just great little quote tweet from Vitalik, but definitely go read the thread from Scroll here. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so Squirtle here from Zapper, so he works as a front-end dev, or he or she works as a front-end dev at Zapper, put together a thread saying how using Zapper's newly revamped Manage Allowances page makes revoking ERC20 allowances less daunting. Easily see any of your wallet allowances in a simple UI, and there's a thread here. It's a short thread, but basically, if you're a Zapper user, and if you aren't, you can connect your wallet here, and you'll have a nice little list, a little table of all the contracts that you've interacted with, all the smart contracts that you've interacted with, and the ones that you have given permissions to, and this allows you to revoke the permissions from them. And there's also a risk score factor here as well, which I thought was pretty cool. So we all know that we give permission to a lot of smart contracts as time goes on, and then we forget about them, right? And then sometimes those smart contracts have bugs in them that allow the hacker to drain funds from addresses that have interacted with those contracts and given permission to. So it's always good to do like cleanup of these sorts of things. So definitely, if you haven't yet, go check out Zapper's tool here. Connect your wallet, connect your multiple wallets, go through the list, revoke the permissions from things you don't use anymore, old protocols, especially if you haven't done it since DeFi summer, when I was given permission to so many things in DeFi summer because there was new protocols popping up every day. You guys know I was like a total degen back then, but I went back on most of my addresses and ones that I knew about, that I remembered about, and I revoked a lot of those permissions because it's just good hygiene at the end of the day. Good, I guess, address hygiene at the end of the day. All right, so Argent has an update out, a small update, where they said Argent X is now 3 times faster with this huge update. They achieved this without compromising security, and you can check it out for yourself and let them know what you think. So for those of you who don't know, Argent X is Argent's browser extension wallet for the Starknet ecosystem. And as you can see in this video, it's quite a lot faster at loading all the balances and basically a lot smoother. So if you're a user of that, just a quick shout out here that it should have updated for you automatically. And you would have seen this, but yeah, really, really cool to see that this update came out today. All right, so speaking of updates, Sismo has an update about their governance architecture here. So they said, we are kickstarting our open governance using the Sismo contributor ZK badge to distribute voting power. And there's an announcement blog post and a resources link here, and as well as an approval vote, and also a thread to go with it. So if you want to learn how Sismo is approaching their contribution-driven governance process, well, you should definitely go check out this thread. And if you have one of those Sismo contributor ZK badges, then you can get involved directly with this, but I'll link this in the YouTube description below for you to check out. Because I think it's worth reading all of this sorts of stuff to get a good grasp of what's going on here. And I want to leave a few extra minutes for the last thing I wanted to talk about, which I'm going to end this episode bullish. I started this episode, I wouldn't say bearish, but, obviously not talking about the most fun of things. But we all know the last 24, 48 hours, the prices of crypto are pumping, right? This happens from time to time. We'll have a pump, and who knows if it'll sustain itself. Who knows if it's a new bull market. I definitely don't think it's a new bull market right now. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But basically, we're all watching the Ultrasound Money website a lot, right? We're seeing how much ETH is burnt, seeing how much ETH would have been issued under proof of work, and I talk about it from time to time on the Refuel. But I checked it again today, and I checked it because of the recent rally, and I wanted to contextualize this for people. So I said, it's been 41 days since the merge. If Ethereum was still on proof of work, there would be up to 488,000 ETH that miners would be able to dump into this pump. Instead, net issuance is only 1,300 ETH since the merge, and stakers can't sell any of that yet. And you're still bearish, I asked with a question mark, of course. So what I mean by this is that during these kind of rallies and these pumps, you expect there to be more sell pressure because people are taking profits, or maybe miners are selling because they're like, oh, wow, I can get a better execution price now. It's pumped up a lot. ETH's up 15% today. I'm going to take the advantage of this pump and sell into it. That obviously adds to the sell pressure, adds to, and can potentially cause the price to retrace its entire pump in some cases, right? Between the traders selling and other people taking profits and all that sorts of stuff. But now we've eliminated that completely. And we've actually eliminated more than 488,000 ETH, which a follow-up tweet here where I said, it's even more bullish than this because the proof of work number above includes the burn. Without the burn included, ETH going to miners would have been around 550,000 ETH to date since the merge. So essentially, we have 550,000 ETH, which is not getting sold into any of these pumps anymore, right? From miners, from people that have to sell because they have costs to cover. And also, on top of that, we don't have withdrawals yet, so not even the stakers can sell. And that 1,300 ETH number also includes the burn on the staking side of things, but If I exclude the burn from that, the issuance I think would be 20 or 30,000 ETH or something like that. Maybe it's a bit more than that, but still obviously considerably lower than it would have been under proof of work. And again, stakers can't sell right now anyway. So what kind of effect does that have on the markets? Well, you guys know, I've been saying this for ages. Over the long term, I think it has an absolutely enormous effect. And I think it has effects into these rallies that we see. And it's the main reason, or a big reason why I have been so bullish on ETH BTC. So the ETH BTC ratio is because I've discussed this before on the refuel, but basically I believe BTC has so many headwinds, ETH has so many tailwinds, and also BTC still has minor sell pressure, whereas ETH doesn't. Naturally, over time, that's going to play out. And there are so many people that are bearish on ETH BTC right now because they're looking at previous cycles on the charts and things like that. The charts from previous cycles aren't going to show you the effect of this massive issuance reduction. This is what I hate about people who are chart maximalists, right? Like, there's a place for charts, but when you're looking at data that existed in very, very different market conditions and very different conditions for ETH as an asset and Ethereum as a network, I'm talking about 2018, 2019, versus today, you can't even compare the two. Like, it's a 9-day difference between what Ethereum was back then and what it is today. In 2018, ETH had to deal with the enormous sell pressure from not only miners, but also all the ICOs that raised ETH that were selling, and all the speculators that came because of that in 2017. And we went down 94% because of that. But if you look at 2018 and compare it to today, especially ETH BTC, which went down a lot as well in 2018, and then also 2019, you look at all that and compare it to today, where's the similarity? There isn't any. The speculators, of course, the speculators are the only similarity across any market cycle. There's always going to be speculators, right? And there's always going to be long-term investors. But the major difference between this bear market and the last one, I mean, there's many major differences, but the one on just the pure ETH side of things is this absolutely massive issuance reduction here, right? And then you just look at all the fundamentals behind that. Ethereum's move to proof of stake, Ethereum's growing L2 ecosystem, Ethereum's very resilient DeFi ecosystem compared to other ones, NFTs. There's so much going on that anyone who looks at a chart from back then on ETH and tries to extrapolate that out and say, okay, well, this is what's going to happen to ETH, this is what's going to happen to ETH BTC in this current time, in this current market, I don't think that makes any sense at all. And there's been people that have been wrong about this a lot over the past, 10 months during this bear market. They were super bearish on ETH BTC, and ETH BTC went up, and it's going up now, right? ETH is leading this bull market, leading this pump. Will it sustain? I don't know. I guess obviously it's not financial advice here, but taking all of the fundamentals into account, right? You can see why this time. I struggle to say this, but this time is different when it comes to ETH as an asset to 2018 and 2019. Very, very different, right? But anyway, I'm going to end that bullish rant there. I just thought it was important to highlight those sorts of things. As usual, obviously not investment advice. No idea if this pump's going to continue or not. No idea when the bull market's coming back. But you guys know I'm always in it for the long term, always stacking ETH. But on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.